It's decision day for the Monetary Policy Committee and a great day to watch Business Morning on Channels Television. You're welcome to the show. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
And I'm Laddie Williams. As you can imagine, the conversation on the MPC will dominate both Business Morning and our special extended Business Incorporated program today. But first, let's look at the top stories. Oil prices rose for a third day today, holding around 1 week highs after jumping more than 3% the previous session as investors tempered previous expectations of an early return of oil exporter Iran to international crude markets. Brent crude futures were up 14 cents at $68.60 a barrel, having jumped 3% yesterday. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures was up 8 cents at $66.13 a barrel after gaining 3.9% the previous session. Indirect negotiations between the United States and Iran are due to resume in Vienna this week. The talks were given another life after Tehran and the UN Nuclear Agency extended a monitoring agreement on the Middle Eastern country's atomic program.
And back here in Nigeria, the chairman of Seplat Petroleum Development Company PLC, Mr. Ebisi Ojako, says the board has received the approval of shareholders for a name change to Seplat Energy. Speaking during its hybrid 8th annual general meeting in Lagos, Mr. Ojako adds that Seplat seeks to be more involved in promoting low-carbon environment in its operations. Here's the report.
Requirements of the Companies and Private Matters Act.
It's Seplat's hybrid 8th annual general meeting with auditors, regulators, company directors, the media, amongst other stakeholders, joining here physically and virtually.
I do hereby confirm that we have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Meetings of this nature have some procedures, so as soon as the notices of the meeting is read, it is business proper.
Only press the ABS button if you do not wish to vote on a resolution. More
than 20 resolutions are up for adoption by shareholders or returned unopposed, including a change of name for the company from Seplat Petroleum Development Company PLC to Seplat Energy. And here is why.
In providing energy solution in a transition world, it means that apart from producing liquid hydrocarbon, one of the things we said we'll do was to commercialize our gas. We've achieved that. The ANU gas project, if you put that side by side with the Shell-owned gas project in that same zone, it is indeed one of the biggest investment in the oil industry in Nigeria, and we're happy to be proud a part of that. So going forward, we provide these solutions not just in money making, but making sure that we're fully aligned with all the climate change narrative.
We continue to delever even in difficult situations. Okay, and that really speaks to what Seplat's all about, which is managing risk and getting ready for the better times ahead. And we're starting to see that now.
The year 2020 has ended 31st December was a challenging year for businesses. Seplat says it pulled through and well enough. The company's cash position remains strong in the full year of 2020 with $318 million of cash generated from operations and $150 million invested for future growth.
The retiring auditor shall be reappointed without passing a resolution.
A new dividend policy has been approved. Every quarter, Seplat shareholders will be paid dividends.
The easiest way to speak about it is time value of money and cash flow. If you are a shareholder who receives dividend, the same amount once in a year, when you have high inflation, your ability to purchase will be much reduced.
Seplat provides about 33% of gas to power and says it will continue to invest heavily in expanding its domestic gas business in line with federal government's strategy to achieve universal access to electricity and to make energy cheaper and cleaner by replacing diesel generation.
And the governors of Ogun and Lagos states have formally signed a memorandum of understanding on a joint development commission for socio-economic development of the sister states. First of its kind in the country, at a ceremony held at the Presidential Lodge in Abeokuta, the Ogun State capital, both leaders promised to ensure the workability and sustainability of the developmental agenda framework. Do take a listen.
The idea of a mega city development between Lagos and Ogun was mooted by former President Olusegun Obasanjo during his administration, but the efforts did not yield the expected results. Today's event is expected to see Lagos and Ogun seal the deal with the signing of the policy document.
Shall we put it together for the two excellencies? Thank you very much.
The governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, sets the ball rolling, highlighting critical areas of collaboration.
We're expecting that the memorandum will look at areas of trade and investment, will look at resolving boundary issues, will enhance and ensure that security and intelligence gathering and sharing becomes part of us. We'll look at issues around environmental and fiscal planning activity. We'll look at issues around safety, emergencies, disaster management, water transportation, and clean water that we're currently developing amongst our two states.
The Ogun State Governor, Dapo Abiodun, who is also in the meeting, is seeking the support of the private sector and the necessary political will to ensure the success and sustainability of the Development Commission.
The official launch of this commission today will further initiate and accelerate more projects necessary to aid ease of movement of our people, goods and services, as well as increase industrialization along our border communities and ensure a wholesome development of our both states. Therefore, I call on the private sector to support and collaborate with the two governments in this success story of the Ogun-Lagos Joint Development Commission.
They signed the agreement that will foster greater relationships, drive economic activities, infrastructural, and urban renewal. The Ogun State Governor wraps up the meeting with a special presentation. He says the plaque is a constant reminder of what they share.
The three districts in green, red, and blue, the west, the central, and the east. But without knowing that, we had also produced the map of Lagos State, which is underneath.
The signing of this joint economic development strategy is expected to ensure a more robust and mutual development with residents of the two states as the ultimate beneficiaries.
In a couple of hours, the MPC decision will be known, and do remember that we have an extended business incorporated which will accommodate that session with a panel of discussants, and that's at 1:30 p.m. For now, we discuss expectations from that meeting and other burning issues at Commodities Market Update with Damilola Akimbami, a research analyst with Financial Derivatives Company. Good morning, Damilola.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So is your heart beating now for just a couple of hours? What's your expectation?
Oh, well, there are three likely scenarios. One is for the MPC to maintain status quo. The other is for them to increase or to reduce interest rates. Now, we know that some of the major considerations will be, one, the sluggish growth numbers, which were released at 0.51% for Q1. We know that April inflation numbers also dipped marginally to about 18.12%. So these two definitely will be some of the considerations. The CBN also is going to be looking at the illiquidity in the money market, also the exchange rate stability in terms of the forex rationing, how has that impacted on exchange rate. And we know that now the CBN, at least late last night or early this morning, has included the NAFEX rate, that's the Nigerian Autonomous Foreign Exchange Rate, on its website. So now the inflationary pressures definitely support or justify a tightening of interest rates, while the sluggish growth justify or support an ease in interest rates. But we're anticipating or expect the MPs to leave rates unchanged. And why are we saying that? Because the CBN of late has adopted a cautious approach towards monetary policy, and it wants to see that this growth that we're recording is strong enough and robust enough to accommodate a tightening. So if at all we're going to see the CBN continue to use its traditional means of monetary policy, by that I mean selling maybe more open market operation bills, more treasury securities in the market. And we've seen that so far the liquidity position of banks has been really tight. We've seen interest rates average about 15% compared to about 3% in January. So we expect that that's going to continue. And now that the NAFEX rate, which is around 410, is a reflection of the I and EU window rate. Now that government transactions are going to be carried out at that rate, fuel imports, all transactions, official transactions are going to be carried out at that rate. You're also mopping up liquidity, because now at 410 compared to what it was at 380 naira to $1. So that's another way way the CBN is going to use, or another means the CBN is going to use to manage liquidity in the system. So I think that they're going to leave rates unchanged. Status quo.
Okay.
Again, yes.
Anyway, the oil sector declined by 2.21% year-on-year, while the non-oil sector grew slowly by 0.79%. Is the country on the diversification, path with this happening?
Well, first of all, GDP can be measured using the output approach, using the income approach, and using the expenditure approach. So these numbers that we're looking at are the output approach. So in terms of activities, what is being produced in the economy, Nigeria is well diversified. If you even look at the numbers, the non-oil sector actually contributes more to GDP output than the oil sector. The oil sector just contributes about 9% and is growing about a negative rate of about -2. But more importantly is the revenue. What are you earning? Because that is what will drive investment. That's what you're going to spend to fund your capital projects. Now, in terms of revenue, Nigeria is still highly dependent on oil, and that is where the major issue is. And if you even look at the FAC allocation, the monthly statutory allocation, it declined. What was shared in May declined to around 616 billion from about 680 shared last month. And why? Because of the decline in statutory revenue. Even oil and gas royalties also declined, and we saw a decline in VAT. So what we're seeing is still, the country still depends on oil, but a lot of efforts are being put into growing the non-oil sector, and that's what we're seeing also the likes of VAT, despite the decline in collection, but at least that is beginning to play a more important role in the revenue base. So that is the issue. So Nigeria, we're on that path, but we're not yet where we want to be or where we need to be in terms of revenue diversification.
That path? That's another thing.
So we also saw that the GDP was primarily driven by agriculture and industry, and this should be good when you compare the pandemic, the effect of the pandemic, and then the insecurity. That means without these two problems or challenges, it would have been much, much better if in the midst of this, we still have these industries and agriculture driving the growth.
Yeah, so agriculture has remained one of the few sectors that has been resilient, even amidst the pandemic and insecurity. And if you look at the breakdown of the GDP numbers, you have services, industries, and agriculture. Services still account for the largest component, then agriculture and industry around 22.3%, 22.2%, so roughly around the same. And like I said, agriculture has been resilient. So if there was no pandemic, if there was no insecurity, most likely we would have seen better numbers for these sectors. But then again, it would be premature to say that the economy is, or the impact of these events have worn off the economy. Pandemic, yes, we're slowly recovering from that, but insecurity is still a major threat all over the nation, and that coupled with the other fundamental issues that are occurring, so planting season, even the forex issue that has led to high imported inflation. So all these are playing into commodity prices and continue to impact on numbers. Now we're in the peak of the planting season, so when the Q2 numbers come out, you're going to see that impact on the agriculture sector. But bear in mind that now, comparing year on year to what happened in the second quarter of 2020, and bear in mind that was the peak of the pandemic, and we recorded a -6.1% growth rate in Q2 2020. So because of base year effects, you see that GDP numbers for Q2 would be slightly better, even if it's just because of that base year effect.
Okay, but when we place a GDP figure alongside price movement in the commodities market, what does that tell us?
Yes, so we've already talked about agriculture, we've talked about oil. These commodity prices, we produce, but not enough, so we still import most of what we consume. And we know that globally, food prices are also increasing, which has even become an issue for global monetary authorities, and that is feeding into our domestic commodity prices. So for instance, if you're having the global price of wheat trading high, that would feed into, obviously, flour-based products and commodities. So if you take that coupled with the fact that we still have low total factor productivity in Nigeria, meaning that we are not utilizing all the resources available to yield the optimum level of output, our potential output growth level compared to what we are growing now, I think our potential output level is about 8%, meanwhile we are growing about 0.5%. So there's a recessionary gap. So we're yet to unlock those resources, which will translate into the optimal growth that is required. So there's still that disconnect between the high commodity prices and the low growth rate we're seeing.
Yeah, and when you talk about the potentials in agriculture, we tend to forget the value chain, the preservation. You know, if global food prices are high now, this might be a good time to tap into it. If we can do packaging and preservation and tap into, you know, it might be a way to also increase our revenue.
I agree with you. As in one of the issues that has also affected commodity prices is the supply chain disruption. And part of that, you're looking at the processing, you're looking at the packaging. A lot of these goods are transported from the north to the south where the market is, and most of them, especially the perishables, are lost in transit because of poor packaging. And also there are a lot of opportunities in the processing value chain which we are yet to unlock. So I believe that, especially for the agricultural sector, because we have the land, we grow most of these commodities here.
We have the weather, we have the land, we have the people.
We have the people. So yes, so investing in across the value chain definitely would contribute to unlocking the opportunities in these sectors, especially agriculture, because Nigeria is yet to reach that level of food security, and that's why we still import a lot, and it's affecting our food prices.
Now, some people say we import a lot because of Nigerians' taste.
Yes, for some commodities. So if you're looking like wheat, I know there was a time we talked about wheat and all that. So definitely, because we import the hard red winter wheat from Russia and from the US, and the quality of that wheat is totally different from what we grow here in Nigeria. So definitely, for you to get Nigerians to switch to the wheat that is being grown here is going to be a tall order. Remember when we had that issue with cassava bread and that didn't pan out. So definitely, yes. So for some commodities, tastes would factor in, but then still, there's still other commodities that we can grow and we can leverage on if we have the comparative advantage to do so.
All right, I see the reserves are down by at $34.35 billion.
Drip, drip, drip.
Drip, drip.
Yes. We've been seeing that happen, and we, over the past couple of weeks, despite the fact that oil prices have been high, about $67, $68 per barrel. And that's because obviously we know that the CBN has been consistent with its intervention in the markets. And now that it's going to be selling at 410, 411 NAFEX and IFX rates, so definitely we are mopping up more liquidity. And because our forex inflows are not increasing as much as the demand, because that demand backlog is still there, we're going to continue to see that impact on external reserves. But the good news is that at least Nigeria is planning its Eurobond issue, so that should boost our external reserves to an extent as the global economy starts to recover also, and we begin to see unemployment rates drop globally. Migrant workers get more, they can remit more funds, and that also would contribute to our external reserves level.
Okay. What's going on in the commodities market, the prices?
Well, prices in the domestic commodity market, the main issue right now is the planting season and also insecurity. Those two issues are at the forefront of what is driving commodity prices, and we're going to see that prices will remain elevated in coming time. So yes, I know that the April inflation numbers, we saw that deep. Food inflation also declined, but the fact that food inflation declined, no, again, it's year on year. So what we're trying to say is that compared to last year, the pace of increase is slower, not necessarily that food prices are declining. And bear in mind, like for instance, now pepper and tomato are going for about 20,000, 30,000 per bag. Once we're in June, those prices are going to increase. So the planting season is definitely going to play a major role, and prices are going to remain elevated at least in the next month or two.
So store your house now.
Store your house, yes. Store your house.
All right, Damilola, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your thoughts with us this morning. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And you too.
Well, we'll just take a break now. When we come back, more conversations, especially towards the MPC. Join us again. You're welcome back. It's still Business Morning on Channels Television. And do remember that the MPC decision will be on live in our special extended Business Incorporated edition today at 1:30, so do join us then for that information. And just before we get into all of that, a little bit of talking about being a billionaire. I remember a popular slogan some time ago: to be a millionaire, think like a millionaire. But to be a billionaire, it's all about habits. Habits define us, they determine our decisions, and our decisions determine our destiny. How successful or unsuccessful we'll be in life, this is one principle which is captured in the book Billionaire Habits, and the author, Dr. Stephen Akintayo, the managing director of G-Tex Homes, joins us to talk about these habits that will make us billionaires.
I hope I hope I have those habits.
You're about to find out.
Yeah, we'll find out. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well,
Good to see you.
I know you're being a billionaire. Does it have anything to do with the MPC?
No, not at all.
Because that's our focus. Like today in Nigeria, we are waiting for 1:30 and all that.
Yes.
But you said you talked about the habits of being a billionaire. What are some of those habits, and how do you form them? Do they come from your parents when you're growing up? Do you adapt them as you're growing up?
Or DNA?
I think the same way you've never seen a born journalist, right? So you don't have a that there are of course people who by parent maybe through will, but in terms of the habits, you are not born with it. You develop them over time. And one of the ways to develop them is actually through apprenticeship, because professors don't teach them the university. So you don't learn them through formal education, but by meeting people who are billionaires and learning from them is the way to the top. And everybody who has ever become a billionaire, even in Nigeria, you look at Dangote, how he was mentored by his uncle. You always see that trace of how to learn under somebody else. I was an apprentice to somebody else. I pick up certain principles. And usually the story is always that I probably, used my allowance, or I got a loan, but the money they got is never commensurate to the wealth they built. So it tells you that it was really the habit that led to the growth, and not necessarily what you get. Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of those habits?
Well, there are many of them discussed in the book. One of it, which is I often share, is about two poor people cannot help themselves. One must first get to the top before he throws the rope to help the other one. And so one of the habits is actually, building a culture of connecting with people who are financially better than you, so that you can, of course, move to the top. But oftentimes we don't even do that. You see, there's a song, Olowo Shore Olowo Otoshi Shore Otoshi, right?
And for those who don't understand Yoruba.
Meaning the poor is a friend of the poor, the rich is the friend of the rich. And usually that is the reason why you see poverty being perpetuated from one generation to the other among poor people, and wealth almost remaining, except when you then have a bastard child that wastes, and squanders the money. But usually you see the wealth still circling because of the network, because your network determines your net worth.
Okay.
Is that why you said in your book that the rich are arrogant? Are they arrogant?
No, they're not really. But the perception of a poor person is that if you're wealthy, you are arrogant, because it takes certain principles, right, to build wealth. For example, I can't remember the last time I bought Ashwebi, and I probably can afford to start a company that produces that, right? But it's just a waste. At my wedding, we're less than 20, right? I just don't have the luxury of wasting money, right? So,
these are some of the habits.
These are some of the habits. So if you come to me as a relative and you tell me of how your great-grandfather has died, and they must know, they must take, and as your uncle or your brother, I must give you money, and I'm asking, I don't even do such, right? Personally, it's not a habit that I have for myself, so why should I necessarily do that? So you can then term that to be arrogance.
So instead of funding other people's habits.
Yeah,
basically.
Exactly.
All right, so what is the most important trait to be a billionaire? What's the most important habits to cultivate?
Well, I think it's diligence. I was sharing a devotion with my staff this morning that there are two things I've never seen with any billionaire. I've never seen a billionaire that's a gossiper. Again, we're not talking of corrupt politicians here, So when we analyze billionaires, we're talking of people who work hard for their money, the entrepreneurs, so that people get it. Because in this part of the world, whenever you say certain things, what comes to mind is how they stole 16 point something billion, So we're talking about people who legitimately made money. So I've never seen a billionaire that's a gossiper. It's straight up. I don't like this, I don't like this. What he says behind you, probably say in your presence. But the second one, I've never seen a lazy billionaire. Right? I've never seen a billionaire that is lazy. I woke up, you know, after 3 this morning.
Okay.
You know, and that's the attitude. And I was sharing with her, I said, I work averagely 16 hours a day. I cannot be at the same level with the person who does 8 hours a day. It doesn't work that way.
But, you know, being a billionaire is one thing, but actually keeping that status is another thing. How do you maintain that status?
Well, it's because there are 3 ways to this. You need to know how to make money. That's step 1. You need to know how to manage money. That's step 2. You need to know how to multiply money. So where you're talking about now is managing money, right? And that's really a place of mentorship and sound advisors, right? So you have to have great mentors who have gone ahead of you, because success is not a destination, it's a journey, right? You know, I have a lot of, you know, I mean, average of my mentors are billionaires in dollars that I'm learning from to say, you know, I've just started, I need your help. And that's their attitude, really. It's not like you get somewhere and you have arrived. It's a journey.
You keep going. And talking about management habits, the parts in the book when you talked about management, you mentioned emotional intelligence.
Yes.
Yeah, and that seems to be something that is in the ICT world these days. So how do you blend the money management and emotional intelligence?
So, you know, what I think I came up with that concept of emotional intelligence when it comes to investment. Now, usually when you say emotional intelligence, general emotional intelligence, particularly when it comes to relationship with people. But I came up with a term, emotional intelligence, when it comes to the concept of investment. So you see people do all manner of Ponzi schemes, right? Invite their family members, relatives to put their money, and then you hear stories of people committing suicide. Now, a real entrepreneur doesn't do that, because you understand that there are 3 types of investment: low risk, mid risk, and high risk. Now, all these Ponzi schemes fall under high risk investment, and you don't even if you want to do such, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. You spread all your risk. So the culture and the concept of managing money and then just carrying all your money, you know, and then putting it in one Ponzi scheme and thinking wealth is about luck, money is mythical, you know, those are some of the things that needs to go. And that's part of why I decided to write the book, because I realized that in this part of the world, we do not educate people. You go, you check the media, I mean, check foreign media, you see conversation around all the wealthy people writing a book or having a coaching program or organizing some seminars or the other. But in this part of the world, nobody is teaching anything.
But writing the book is one thing. Getting people to read the book is another thing.
Yeah, and that's part of why we need you media to put, you know, reading to become a mainstream conversation, right? The same way you see twerking, music, and all these things has become mainstream. We also have to put that conversation of books, and then, of course, our successful people need to write it. I want to see you write a book on how you built a successful media empire. I want to see that, right? If we all start doing something around that, then people know that something about this book thing, okay, maybe I should start reading, because it then draws people. Naturally, if you really are serious about becoming wealthy and you heard somebody write a book on billionaire habit, I think you'll get a copy of that book, right? If you want to become a successful journalist and a John Momo of China's television writes a book on how to, you know, how he built his media empire, you want to read something like that. But we just need to begin to speak to people who are successful in different sectors to say, let's start, because hope has been starved, you know, from the hearts of young people in this country, right? You don't even have something to look up to. When we were growing up, you know, there were things, there were people like MK Abiola, there are things you were aspiring to be like. There were people you were aspiring to be like, and they were there in your face. But now it's like everybody's withdrawn to their shelf, and we're just looking at like, you know what, whatever happened to this nation. But every great country you've seen, America has over 18,000 millionaires, not even millionaires. China is number 2 with, I think, 4,000. So what that shows you is that the bigger the economy, the bigger the number of millionaires in that economy. So do you want Nigeria to become big? Government has no business with business. You need to begin to empower entrepreneurs. Young people need to go into business. They need to have people they can look up to. They need to have role models. I'm not saying politicians. And you media need to put those role models in their faces. so that they can look up to such people.
Yeah, and you know, it's also important when you say the bigger the country, the higher the number of millionaires or billionaires, you know, but also the path to their billionaire or millionaire, because we have celebrated some people and later had a news of how their wealth were not clean. You know, so
but we're investigative journalists, right? So it's our job, right? Before because I think sometimes one of the challenges to that is because even the media is commercialized to a huge level. So the people who have, you know, the means to be out there have to have some substance. And then sometimes if you don't even have on your own, I'm doing this because, I mean, I was born poor and I really vow to God. I mean, I trek this Lagos, I trek almost everywhere. So it was a personal message that, Lord, if you bless me, I want to teach people. I want people to know how they can make it legitimately. But on a normal day, I mean, you are busy you have a lot to do, and then you want to teach somebody. I mean, as long as it's not commercially viable, that's the last thing you want to think of.
All right, and your book is available for anyone to purchase?
Absolutely. We even do a global virtual launch, you know, online, and they could go to my website, stephenakitao.com, and they can register to it. June 1st, we're going to be doing global virtual launch, so you can buy it, but it's also on Amazon. It's on the website also, and we're doing a global review where a lot of us are coming together discussing this, because for me, the conversation around entrepreneurship has to become mainstream. If we really want to end insecurity, if we really want to empower young people, if we want to end unemployment, because you need to start a business to provide jobs, and those jobs end up, you know, taking care of other things.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Stephen
Thank you for having me.
the MD CEO of GTEX Homes, for sharing these billionaire habits with us.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys have a copy.
Oh, thank you so much.
So this is yours.
How generous of you.
This is yours.
So I guess our habits will start
yeah, my billionaire comes in now. Thank you so much,
Thank you for having me. I
and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Well, we head over to the markets now. Anete is standing by. Well, we ended last week with 5 negative sessions, and then we're starting again this week. Anete, we need to do something about this market.
Good morning, Ini. I don't know what we can do about the market. It's becoming rather like, you know, a daily thing, something that you keep saying, the same thing day in, day out, week in, week out. Yes, again, another new week, the final trading week of May. We're still in the red. And take a look at it's down by 0.10%, which in value, that means that we lost about 19 billion naira just yesterday. And that's no thanks to the heavy loss on the share price of Nestle. And of course, if you take a look at its sectoral performance, it was negative. Banking sector down, consumer goods, that's because of Nestle. And then, of course, we had, it was a positive market breadth. We had about 17 losers and against 19 gainers. But of course, the market still refused. It just tells you that maybe that adage, that popular adage of sell in May and go away, is it just wants to make, reestablish that fact. Although we've been trying to see how, you know, how the market can push away the bear and bring back the bull. Now, don't forget, Nigeria's stock market was regarded, or has been known as the world's best performing stock market. But if you take a look at it, month to date we're down 3.9%. Year to date we're down by 4.9%. So, well, let's join Charles Fakruga, Chief Operating Officer at Supra Commercial Trust Limited, to give us more details about the market. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Okay, so, well, it's becoming rather a cliche, at least within the better part of the month of May, that the market is down, down, down. We've lost about, almost about $1 trillion, yes, almost $1 trillion naira. Please, can you give us an update on why this is persisting?
Well, the market always reflects the larger economy, like we say in the stockbroking community, that the market is the barometer of the economy. it measures what happens in the economy. So the market does not operate in isolation. You can see the macroeconomic variables that are coming out from the NBS and, of course, what we see, the situation. So the market will reflect that. So out of what we have seen playing out in the month of May. However, we also have some defending investors that even if market is going down, it's also an opportunity for them to reassess their portfolio, rebalance it, and begin to take position. Because for any investor, you must have a long-term perspective of the market. It is not a today thing or a tomorrow thing. For an investor that is coming to the capital market, you must have a long-term perspective. So this day-to-day fluctuation in the prices of equities should not really be a problem to long-term investors who are investing in blue chip companies.
Charles, you say that, 1 man's meat is another man's poison. And, so now that the market is down, and what do you think can encourage new investors into the market? Because, it's been more of lackluster performance, and then it's not inspiring for anyone to try and put their money into the equities market. What do you think? Do you think the MPC meeting of today can maybe whet investors' appetites?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, expecting the outcome of the MPC meeting. Well, if you ask me personally, I think for what if you are the part of recovery, they say GDP has done 0.51. The MPC people there might want to just leave all the parameters of change, not to rock the boat. But however, for the same investors in the capital market, yes, we want to encourage them to come to the market, and they are seeing this bearish market continuously. Again, there are risk mitigating factors that are in place now. We have securities and lending. So for whether market is coming down, whether market is going up, for discerning investors that understand the process very well, you can also profit in any direction the market is going. It's for you to do your own work, get close to your stockbroker, know the amount of risk you can take, then you get into equity that have that fair degree of doing very well in terms of dividend payment. Even in the down market, you still see some equity that will still do something good. So just let for the investor to do his own work, be able to know the amount of risk, calculated risk to take, and go to out there and then invest in the market.
Akroga. Okay, so let's move over to the unlisted securities markets. It's also a bearish sentiment there. Yesterday we started the week positive, or rather, or last week we ended the week positive, but this week we started down almost 1%, and of course the volume of trades there is still small. It just tells you that bearish nature, that the bear has just crossed from the equities market into the unlisted securities market. We had just about 37 deals. Then over to the debt market, it's still bearish sentiments all across board. Although we just weak transactions there, weak, nil, almost. So we don't know right now. What can drive investors' appetite? We just don't know. So we just have to adopt a wait and see approach for the markets.
We hope that with the MPC coming up later today, that some things will move, and any of the markets at least to bring the greens back to the markets. Thank you so much, Anita. Well, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll head over to London. Welcome back. You're still watching Business Morning on Channels Television. We'll head over to London now, where Juliana is waiting to give us updates from the UK. Good morning, Juliana.
Good morning.
Yeah, so government borrowing hit £31.7 billion in April, and this is lower than the same month last year. Parts of the economy reopened. What's the explanation behind this?
Well, yeah, it is slightly lower, £15.7 billion lower than it was this time last year. But, of course, it's still eye-wateringly high at £31.7 billion. The Office for Budget Responsibility, which is the government's own body that kind of keep their eyes on government debt, predicted that in April it could be £39 billion. So the business headline here in the UK is that April borrowing is much lower. Of course, this is all down to the COVID support schemes. About 4.2 million people are still receiving furlough payments. There are so many different loan schemes that the government have been dishing out, but they've been slowly winding down, which is why the government are pretty happy with today's results. Also, tax receipts are at £58 billion, much higher than they were this time last year, but still historically low. I think the Chancellor Rishi Sunak is hoping that once the economy is open fully, which is still scheduled to be June the 21st, we've all got that in our diary, then perhaps they can start creeping up the tax payments. But government debt still stands at £2.17 trillion. This is more than 98% of GDP.
And WWF and Greenpeace are calling on the government to introduce new regulations after the report that British banks finance 805 million tons of production a year. Any idea what regulations could be put in place?
Well, what they're doing is these environmental activists are putting pressure on the British government to do more, especially as in November, Britain hosting COP26, which is a kind of big, dramatic follow-up to the Paris Climate Agreement when the nations said they are going to try to reduce the temperature of the world. Britain say they are supposed to be the leader in trying to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, but it has been revealed in this report that the banking industry, the financial industry, is one of the dirtiest contributors to the climate emergency, showing that they are funding lots of oil-related and other pretty highly polluted sectors. One of the good things is that we have had some updates. I think I was discussing this on your show last week about these new Bank of England green bonds. I believe the government, well, the Bank of England set aside about £20 billion as part of their quantitative easing programme, and they're no longer going to be using these £20 billion to buy debt from polluted companies. They're going to be giving this debt towards buying this debt from companies that are doing the best they can to reduce their emissions. Also, I believe a couple of days ago, G7 nations agreed that they'll no longer be funding overseas coal projects. I know the OECD said they're going to stop financing oil companies. So it is a long time coming. But of course, this report, announced in The Guardian today just shows that there's still a long way to go.
A long way indeed, but it's a slow recovery for the tourism sector, with the expectation that spending by holidaymakers will be half of the level it was in 2019. And there's a summit by tourism chiefs today. This should be a major talking point there.
Absolutely, it will be. UK tourism lost, I believe, about £57 billion last year. In 2019, it was worth about £90 billion. Of course, now it's much less than that. And there are so many confusing signals about tourism here in the UK. But we do know if you're coming here in the UK, you've got to self-isolate. Who wants to do that when you don't need to self-isolate in other countries? So that's what the tourism boards are going to be discussing today. I believe a lot of them have set aside millions of pounds to try and encourage more domestic travel, trying to entice people that live in the UK to, put a jacket on and take their summer holiday in the South Coast or in some of the beauty spots that they've got dotted around the country. So they're really hoping that staycations this summer are going to boost domestic tourism. But of course, because there are still so many COVID restrictions in place, a lot of these companies that are seeing lots of interest from domestic travellers cannot accommodate everybody because people still need to maintain their social distance. But hopefully we're coming out of it soon because the inoculation process is going swiftly here in Britain.
Yeah, well, we hope so too, because when Britain is safe, the world is safe. When Nigeria is safe, the world is safe. Thank you so much, Juliana, and do enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Well, we move over to the crypto space now with Ladi. Ladi, what's going on?
The market is still extremely fearful, but not as fearful as yesterday. Today we're at 22 points on the fear greed index. Let's look at Bitcoin there. Bitcoin still trying to break that 40K region. If Bitcoin breaks that region, we might see some more upside. But if it's rejected at that 40K, we might see some more ranging, or Bitcoin might actually go down really much. Market cap $1.68 trillion, up about 11.83%. 24-hour volume is down about 13%, and the Bitcoin dominance went down from 45% yesterday, is now at 43%. Let's talk to Solomon Amunde now. Hello, Solomon.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning.
Good morning, Solomon. So last week it was all about FUD in the crypto market, but it seems the institutional investors are getting in at this moment. What are they doing?
Okay, last week we had so many persons panic sell, and it was very, very, very crazy. It wasn't the institution. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Solomon.
Okay. It wasn't the institutional investors. I can hear myself talking.
Okay, sorry about that, Solomon. How's it now?
Okay. It's almost still the same thing.
Okay, how is it? Try again.
Okay, much better now. Much better.
All right.
So last week it was pretty crazy. It wasn't the institutional investors dumping the market this time around. It was the masses, those that got in based on the hype, those that really didn't understand the assets that they were dealing with. They were the ones that caused this massive dump, and it was all what we refer to as food, FUD. China came up and they said they were increasing the shutdown of exchanges, and they were trying to make sure that Bitcoin investment was for only the wealthy and the rich. And so many persons started selling off. Elon Musk spoke about Bitcoin not being used by miners in terms of renewable energy, that the miners were causing the increase in carbon emission and all that. And that also sparked so much dump. And we heard what FTX had to, Sam, CEO of FTX, he came up and he had to support with the whole renewable energy, that he'll be willing to give out a portion of FTX generated fees from trading to support renewable mining of Bitcoin. And that's what has been happening all through last week. And we heard Elon last 2 days, he came up and he said Tesla haven't sold any Bitcoins.
Okay.
And Michael Salvador also said the same thing. Michael Saylor rather also said the same thing, that he hasn't sold any Bitcoin. And all the wealthy guys came out and said they were buying in and they were still hodling.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Solomon. That's all we can take at this. We've run out of time, but thank you so much. We'll talk about what retail should be doing maybe by tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, Ini, that's the market. A couple of big bounces from some altcoins there. Ethereum Classic, 48% up. Nexo, up 41%. Big is up 39%. YFI and QTOM. So it's looking good in the alt market at this point.
Yeah, really looking good, and we hope it looks even better by tomorrow. Well, that's the much we can take. Please don't forget that at 1:30 we'll have a special edition of Business Incorporated, which would accommodate the MPC decision. So do stay tuned at that time. But for
it's
now,
all about the MPC today.
Yeah, it's all about the MPC. Thank you so much for watching Business Morning today. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thank you for watching.